Hey, good morning, Nick. Good morning, Abdi. Hello, Donna. How's everybody doing today?
Good morning.
How's it going?
Good. How are you?
Oh, not bad. Trying to, I got my boat out, so I'm sitting in my boat in my backyard, just waiting for the next round of rain.
Oh, wow. All right.
That's a joke. I'm not really sitting in a boat, but it feels like I should be for sure.
Where are you again? In Sacramento?
No. I'm in Tracy.
Oh, Tracy. Okay.
Yeah, it's been raining up a storm, but I'm sure we all have, we've all been living through it. And, the upside is, and this is kind of, I've said this every day since we've had them, is the fact that, we've needed rain for so long that, we've got to be careful of what we wish for.
Yep.
We got it all at one time, but, we needed it. So this morning I was listening to the news and they said, not only is California out of any drought condition anywhere, but it's 123% above normal. And we haven't even reached the runoff. So, that bodes well for the state in the long term. If you think about all the positives that'll happen, which are things like, minimize wildfire season, all that kind of good stuff. We can live with a little rain, I think, once in a while. We've got near perfect weather almost all the time. So, we can't be too spoiled, right?
Yep, totally agree. Yep.
So let me share my screen. Anybody got anything interesting they want to share as we're getting started? Add anybody new to their team or make some significant changes or anything like that? All right, I'll take that as
yeah, still working on a couple.
That's good. So, I was going to tell you, oh God, it just jumped out of my brain. I believe we're talking to somebody who might be up in your neck of the woods. I may have shared that with you last time. I don't think they've fully committed yet, but I will keep you posted.
Mine?
Yeah, yours.
Oh, yeah. I just spoke to somebody today from Oregon.
Oh, okay. Cool. Oh, right on.
And I'm looking on my dashboard and it looks like there's 5 people. I don't know if they're people who just decided they liked me and joined the team. I haven't spoken to any of them yet, so I don't know what's going on yet.
How could they not like you? Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, what is the initial process of getting these things going, actually?
Well, that's good. We're going to talk about that today.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, that's absolutely something we're going to talk about today. So I really wanted to talk a bit about, what does a team structure look like? So we all talk about teams and wanting a team and, how effective that's going to be. And, I think that's a good thing, right? Got no complaints on that at all. But many of us, have never had a team before. We may have done pretty good in our real estate business and we're thinking, oh my God, I might want to get a team. I want to duplicate. Last week I talked about, the Ray Kroc principle, which is Ray Kroc was the one who basically put McDonald's on the map through a process of franchising. And in a sense, that's kind of what we do with a team. We take folks who are like-minded, people like us, and, we duplicate our efforts. And fortunately for the team leader, you get to share in a bit of the monies because you're the one who kind of put the whole thing together. You're the one who's responsible for everything. So there's a definite benefit to being a team leader. So just kind of launching right in. First of all, who is a team right now? Who's already a team? Okay. So many of you are just wanting to get there, but not quite there yet. So as we look at, hold on just one second. As we look at actually building and developing our team, certainly our team has a certain structure, or at least it should have a certain structure. So, when you talk about a team, you got to think about, who's on your team, why they're on your team, what's their function, what's their purpose, what can they actually provide to you that's of something of value. And on the flip side, what is it that you're providing to them that holds value, that lets them, do what they do and want to work with you, right? That's one of the toughest things. I've said for a long time, teams are very tough to work because at some point somebody's going to get their feelings hurt. They're either going to feel like they're doing all the work or you're not fairly compensating or anything like that. That's, if you think about the bigger picture, that's kind of how brokerages work. And in a sense, a team is kind of like a micro brokerage. It's, while they're still under the supervision of a brokerage, it's a micro broker in the sense that, they've got their own structure. They may have their own commissions and payouts, all those good things. So, a real estate team is a group of professionals who work with a complementary skill set that join together to close more deals. That's ideally what all of you should be hoping for as you're developing your team or as you're working the team that you have right now, right? The goal is always to close more business. I'll say hands down, you never want someone on your team that's not going to work, that's not going to produce. It's a lot of work to deal with somebody who's never going to be in production. So you want to close more deals together. That's why you want to grow a team. As a matter of fact, NAR surveyed many realtors and showed the average real estate team had 4 people on it, 80% who had a real estate license. And that speaks to how you want to develop your team. So nearly 3/4 of team members were compensated at least in part based on commissions. Obviously, when you get paid, they get paid, right? In real estate, unfortunately, it's not like you get a salary, you get a salary, you get a salary, and I'll get commission. We go broke very quickly. It's all based on performance. If you think about what we do, most of us came from a job scenario, and you've heard me say this before. A job scenario is very different. With a job, all we're doing is trading time for money. I mean, certainly we're lending our skill and expertise, but for the most part, we're trading time for money. I'll go to work for a certain amount of days, certain amount of hours, and at the end of the week or in the end of the month, they'll provide me with a paycheck. I traded time for money. And if I don't do my job well, they'll let me go, and then I'll have to find another place where I can trade time for money. That's called a job. With something like real estate, and it's very entrepreneurial, all we're ever trading is performance for money, because we can do all the tasks in the world, but if there's nobody that we're in front of, if there's nobody who can actually pay us, we'll go broke very quickly. We do a lot of things that feel like work, but in reality, the only work is when you're belly to belly, eye to eye with someone, right? So most of the time, as we're compensating ourselves, or as we get compensated, as do our team members, based on the quality of work that they're doing, not quantity, but the quality of work that they're doing. In other words, things that produce a commission. Teams come in all shapes and sizes, ranging from 2 people that are highly experienced and agree to work side by side to close deals, to a single agent who's employed multiple unlicensed assistants. I know a few team dynamics that are exactly like that. Out in the real estate community, to where you've got a single agent and he's got a series of folks, or she's got a series of folks that are doing all the paperwork, all the busy work, that sort of thing. And then they've got a couple of licensed professionals like buyers agents, listing agents, inside sales associates, and sometimes their own personal assistants. And that's really kind of what we're going to talk about today, is more of that type of team dynamic, is, how you're building and growing your team. Has anybody outlined their team already? They already know what it's going to look like, already have a pretty good idea of how it should function? Okay.
What was the question, D?
So, and I know, Jovan, you've already kind of started to build your team a bit, and you have an idea of how it should function. So that's what I was asking, is does anybody already have that in place? And you some time.
I mean, the idea, and this is like kind of a proven model that I've seen on other teams that work. Let's
talk about your team. How is your team functioning?
Right. So I got 2 agents, right? One is more of the buyer's agent role, and the other is more going after sellers.
Got it. So you got a listing specialist and a buyer specialist.
Correct. And then the way that they work together also, right? But dynamically, we have an ISA agent who is just really kind of keeping up with our database and making some cold calls for us.
Yeah.
As we scale, I kind of want to use that model to scale up. So for every
we're going to talk about that today. That's absolutely what we're going to cover. So I'm glad you brought that up. That same dynamic is what we'll cover today. So what Jovan was saying is, he's replicated this model. It's something he's seen before. And, quite frankly, it's one of the most successful models that there is when you talk about team. If you think about it like this, if any of you are into sports, if you had a basketball team that were all forwards, or a soccer team that all played right wing, or a football team where it was nothing but quarterbacks, or baseball where everybody was a pitcher, you'd have a pretty piss poor team, right? Nobody would be playing the outfield. No one would, you'd have an unequitable team. So you want to make sure first, right off the bat, that your team is balanced. And Jovan's already kind of figured out some of the secret sauce to that. What are some of the benefits of having a team to begin with, right? When we think about it, particularly if we're a high-performing, well-producing agent, what are some of the reasons why we even want a team? Again, people can be a headache because it's time spent away from what you do naturally in order to train those folks up. So one of the benefits for sure is a share of costs. Now, fortunately, all of you are at Radius. So, there's a lot of things that are already provided or, assistance provided towards things like marketing, those types of things. One of the real cores to being on a team, particularly with where you are now, all of you are, going to be team leaders or are team leaders, but there's a share of expertise, right? Like in any brokerage. In a brokerage, you have the broker who hopefully is a very experienced person, seen lots of scenarios, been very involved in real estate, knows real estate very well, which is me. I'm a great broker because I have a wide depth of experience in this business. But now each of you think of yourselves as that person, the guider of your team. But you also hire people who may have skills that are different from yours, not necessarily better or worse, but different. So that's definitely a benefit of having a team, is the shared experience. When you're working with a team, you can rely on the performance of others in a slow market sometimes. Like I said, in the Ray Kroc principle, to where, his foundation gets 2% of every hamburger sold for, till the end of time, basically. As long as there's a McDonald's, the Ray Kroc estate gets 2% of every burger. And I think the last time I checked, there's something like 13 billion McDonald's burgers sold every year, something like that. So that's quite a pretty penny, right? For not doing anything. So when you're working with a team, you can rely on the performance of others a little bit more as you look at your overall revenue profile. And then real estate team members are invested in one another's success. So every time you have a real estate challenge, you've got folks that can all come together and figure it out. You don't want to create a team to where everybody is still siloed, to where everybody is still on an island doing their own thing. You want to, part of the purpose of a team is so that you guys can grow and develop together. Okay. What are the roles on your team? Oops, I think I covered this already. Going backward, not forward. So while there are many structures to a team, and Jovan kind of alluded to, how his team is structured, there are many different ways to structure a team. But, kind of the most common is you got a team leader, which is yourselves. And a team leader is either a licensed agent or a broker who sets the direction and the strategy for everybody else on the team. So it's not just you bring somebody on the team and hope they do well. You're responsible for helping to shape their performance, how they're actually executing on the things that you hired them to do. And that's super critical, guys. Like I said, you don't want a team full of people. You did a great job recruiting. You hired 15 people, and those 15 people are going, now what? Okay, so we're here. Now what? What are we doing? We're here. Now what? What do we do? Right? And you're going to get a lot of folks like that in real estate, because you've got folks who may be newly licensed, folks who may have been licensed for a while, but, didn't work actively in the business. They held another job, or they were just doing it at the bare minimum, a little dabble here and there. So you've got to be judicious in how you hire someone to your team as well. But you as the team leader, you're in charge of that. That's your responsibility. That's part of your business plan, is to hire the very best people you can afford at the time, right? The very best people you can afford at the time. You're responsible for training, and then the accountability. You guys have heard me talk a lot about accountability. Accountability is everything in real estate. We all have the best of intentions. Hey, I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to do this thing. I tell you, that's one of the biggest things that frustrates me about my wife. She's a I'm going to do person. Hey, I was going to do it, right? There's only now. There's not a I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it in the future. There is no real future. It's a now thing. So if you've got a lot of I'm going to do this thing, people, your business is not going to do well because you're pushing tasks forward that need to be done today. Okay. So that's your job as a team leader. That's everybody who's in this class today. You are all team leaders. So recognize what your responsibilities are. Start to create some strategies about how you can execute to your team to where they A, see you as a leader, they B, willing to follow you, and C, that you can hold them accountable for the tasks that they do. And keep in mind, accountability is always a bilateral event. It's never a unilateral event. It's not just you holding them accountable. They're also holding you accountable for the things that you say that you're going to do, right? If you're going to do something, it's a lead by example. It's not a lead by association. It's a lead by example moment. So they're holding you accountable just as much as you're holding them accountable. The second person you want to hire is a buyer's agent. So typically in a team structure, part of the reason why we start to develop a team is we get more leads than we can handle sometimes, right? I know when I was practicing, I was primarily doing listings, and then I subsequently transitioned to more of the investment style, which I still do a bit of. And investment, working with investors is a little bit easier in the business, only because it takes away the emotion. It's numbers driven. They're looking, do the numbers make sense, that sort of thing. So for me, I found it to be a much easier business model in that way. But as you're looking at bringing your buyer's agent on board, that's that person who, initially is going to take your overflow. That person is going to be the one to kind of go, let me work those. I got this. I know what my job is on this. That's me. And that, again, is a licensed professional. That's someone who holds either a salesperson's license or a broker's license, right? Everybody on your team doesn't have to be licensed, but it depends on the roles that they're in. And then, a listing specialist is also the same. That's a person who's going to solely focus on going after listings. If you think about a listing, when you're a listing agent, you are an employer. And the reason you're an employer is because everybody comes to you because you have the product. So your job is essentially done once you put the house up for sale and you begin to marketing. And think about it this way. All we ever do is market a property so that can be sold. Listing is great, but if it's priced too high or if the condition's terrible and the thing will never sell and it'll never sell, what did you actually accomplish? Absolutely nothing. And over time, you'll get a negative stain on your reputation as a person who lists a lot of crap, but it doesn't ever sell. And that's not something you want either. Your sole job is to put a property up to where it can be marketed properly for sale. So that listing specialist is the one who focuses on your listings. And that could be, by the way, you. So if you're looking at your team dynamic and you've already hired a buyer's agent, which in my opinion should be your first hire, but you've already hired a buyer's agent, they're taking care of your overflow. You and that buyer's agent may be taking care of you may be taking care of the listings, and that buyer's agent is taking care of your buyers. So you may drag your feet to hire a listing specialist initially. And then finally, you have the real estate assistant. So after your buyer's agent, almost always, unless you've decided not to practice, almost always you should have some form of an assistant. So I know me, I'm the laziest paperwork guy on the planet. I have been my whole adult life. That's one of those I'm gonna persons, when it comes to paperwork. I know it's a necessary evil, but it's not my favorite. I do it. I've gotten a million times better at it over time. But I know I was always the one who was like, oh my God, I got to sit down and do my file. And it was only because it slowed me down. It slowed my machine down. It meant that I had to take time out. I had to spend time and actually go over, this necessary evil, which is file management. And that would always take, hours out of my selling time, what I considered to be, time I could have prospected, time when I could have been belly to belly, eye to eye with someone. So hire a real estate assistant. You may be great at it, but look at who you are in your team dynamic. If you are the team leader, your focus is not, let me make sure I've got the best paperwork on the planet. You want to make sure that you have somebody who can do that. And internally, there are folks inside that can actually help you with that, right? And an assistant is a little bit different than a TC. I know we all like to utilize our TCs more like a real estate assistant, but that's not really a transaction coordinator's job. Theirs is a bit more specific for sure. But again, that real estate assistant they don't have to be a licensed person. They're the ones who are in charge of organization, communication, and filing. They make sure that the licensed members can focus on their core issue, which is driving revenue, right? And revenue is expressed by the commissions that you're bringing in. The more commission, the better everybody's doing, right? I think you all agree with that. So let's break out the roles a little bit more. Let's flesh them out a bit more. And it's not as though you guys don't already know this, but I think it's important that we continually review so that as you're defining and refining your team, you've got all of the right players at the table. So we've talked about a team leader a bit. We know exactly what a team leader does. They're the ones who lead or guide the team. They're usually the ones who founded the team in the first place or had the idea, let's put a team together. I'm doing great. I believe I can get a bunch of other people who I can help to do great under me. That's kind of a team leader's mentality. That's part of what we do. They're the ones who are in charge of hiring everybody, letting people go. There's an old saying, slow to hire, quick to fire. When you're building a team, that holds true much more than in other applications, only because if you meet somebody and right away they're going, yeah, I want to be a buyer's agent. I want to be on your team. And you're like, great. Again, think of the load that you're placing on yourself when you're hiring someone with little to no experience, right? They're going to be that person who you're constantly having to spend time with. In other words, you're going to have to get off your own bus. You're no longer the driver. You're going to have to sit on the bench with them, show them what is necessary in order for them to move forward before you can get on the bus and start driving again. And think about the time that's lost when time is expressed as revenue in the time that you spent to train this person to do a certain thing. I've been training agents for decades. It's a laborious task. It's a lot of work. And so you have to recognize the amount of work that you're going to put in to make sure someone can actually give you some output. So think about that as you're bringing people into your team. You're the person who's responsible for setting the team's direction and creating strategies for that team. If you yourself don't have an idea of where your team is going, man, you guys are going to be on a ship that's going everywhere and nowhere, right? So you've got to have a game plan. You hear me talk about business planning all the time. You've got to be a consummate business planner. You can't just randomly put a group of ragtag people together and hope you're going to have a positive outcome. It usually doesn't work that way. There's an old school movie. Some of you probably haven't seen it, but it's called The Bad News Bears. Have you guys ever seen that movie? Heard of that movie? Okay. The Bad News Bears was this ragtag group of folks that at some point, they end up being very successful. But initially they start off, it's just a bunch of kids, who are put together by this guy to play baseball. But none of them know how to play. They're just out there doing their own thing. And they just are horrible until they get some structure, some guidance, some actual direction so that they can do well. And that's your role as a team leader. You are that person who's putting your Bad News Bears together to where they can actually win a game or two dozen. Okay. A great team leader, which is all of you, should be experienced, knowledgeable, and trusted in the industry by teammates and colleagues. So, if you're newer to the business and there's nothing to be ashamed about, and you've already started to put a team together, make sure that you are still networking with folks outside of you, folks outside of your team. You're constantly wanting to train up. Again, I'm 28 years in the business, and I still go to industry events every single year without fail. Like I told you, there was a couple of years, one which was a COVID year, and the other one which was a personal life event year. But I've only missed events in 2 of my 28 years. And that's because even if I think I know it, I'm going to go anyway, right? Because things change. Things are always changing. And there's nothing wrong with helpful reminders. Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. Oh, yeah, I remember that. But where a lot of realtors or real estate professionals go wrong is they think they know everything. Guys, be honest with yourselves. If it's not you, you know someone who's that. But a lot of times it's us. We won't participate in a training. We won't go to a meeting because I already know that stuff. Why am I going to waste my time going to that thing? Well, it's always important to go to that thing. Again, there could be a kernel that you missed in the previous attendance of or dissemination of that information. So always train up. It's only going to bode well for your team. Your team's going to recognize that you are committed enough to this business to continually exercise and upgrade your knowledge as well. And that's vital. I can't stress that enough. It always frustrates me on a personal level when I meet realtors or talk to realtors and they're like, oh, I don't go to that stuff. Oh my God, it's always the same thing. While some aspects of that may be true, why is your business failing? Why aren't you achieving your goals? You have to start asking yourself some why questions. If you know these things, then why is your performance still remaining the same? Okay. If real estate agents are a small business and you guys are all small business owners, you're the CEOs of your team. You're the CEOs of your company. It's important that you know the ins and outs of your finances as well. But you're the one who's driving that culture. You're the one that's keeping your team engaged to make sure that you're going to get the best outcome at the end of the day. Okay. So I told you your first hire should be an admin. And you can set it up any way you want, but this is my personal preference. Usually we're hiring someone to take on our load when we've got so much business going on that you don't want to lose the momentum. That's usually what it is. Anytime I've hired an assistant, it was because I had so much business going on that I needed somebody to help me out with the paperwork or help me out with the process, work my schedules, help me out with phone calls, all that stuff. And I've had some really great admins. I've had 1 or 2 that were absolutely horrible, but I've had some really great admins. I mean, really great admins that literally thought for me before I even had time to think about it myself. And that's an invaluable person. That's that person who just knows intuitively, what next steps need to look like. And for your customers, you look like a true hero. They look at you like a super well-oiled machine. You're super organized because you've got somebody on the back end who's making sure that you're doing the things you said you're going to do. That admin is that person who, ultimately holds you accountable. They're making sure, hey, you got an appointment at 2. You need to have signs up. What's going on with them? That's that person who is your organizer. Every company has one of those. In our company, we have Kimberly Grovers, who's our kind of superstar admin. She does everything. She makes sure that the company continually stands and that our doors are always open, right? Because all the rest of us, we all do different things. So look at who you are in your team. Look at where you are in your business. That should be your first hire, is an admin, a good admin. Okay. The ideal admin is a person super organized, solution oriented, and extremely helpful. Okay. In my opinion, I want to stress that again, always good to have an admin first. Your next hire is going to be a buyer's agent, right? Buyer's agents come about when you are so busy, when you got so much work going on that it's like, oh my God, I've got all this work going on. I need somebody to handle the overflow, someone who I can direct, someone who I can help manage and create more business opportunity. That's really why you want a buyer's agent, someone who's going to provide you more business. In other words, affect your revenue or your bottom line. That's why we hire a buyer's agent, is that's that person who's going to continue to move the ball forward. So, if you're not at that point to where you've got so much business you don't know what to do, that's okay. You can still work with a buyer's agent, but you have to direct them in a way that they're actually out beating the bushes for you, that they're actually out bringing in new business, right? It's not just you guys are both looking at the wall, throwing a tennis ball back and forth going, so where's the business at? I don't know. Your turn to throw it. Where's the business at? I don't know. Your turn to throw it. It's got to be you're working in unison to where you're both driving revenue by finding more and more business. Okay. It's always served. A buyer's agent is always that person who's willing to follow up on leads. They can prioritize their time. Someone who isn't squeamish about getting on the phone. Those are those people who you need to convert. Those are those people who are actually helping to drive your business, not just a drain of resource. That's why the team dynamic or the team org is so important, because you don't want someone who's going to be a drain on your resources. You don't want someone who's going to go, oh my God, I got to do this thing with this person again, right? Now it's changed your momentum. You're not really getting anything out of it, but I got a team and it feels pretty good to have a team. But that team is not actually producing any income for you. As a matter of fact, it could cause you to go negative, okay? So be very careful in how you hire. Again, a lot of people are going to want to be on your team, but it doesn't necessarily mean they're a good fit for your team. And if you understand that you're the one who drives culture, that will help you to understand how your team works, okay? So admin, my opinion, hire your admin first, then hire a buyer's agent, okay? As Jovan was alluding to, or what he talked about, which was an ISA or an inside salesperson. So again, these are in stages, guys. This is not like an all at once thing. It's not like you have to have all of these people in place day one. It's a gradual thing, because as you're developing strategies, you're also developing a flow and a rhythm of how this team should look. And again, each and every time you're gaining more momentum, as evidenced by the more revenue you're producing, the more active clients that you have in your queue, all those kind of good things. So that ISA or that inside salesperson is someone who literally that's all they do, is they sit on the phone and they warm up leads left and right. And if you think about the stages of a lead starts off as a suspect. A suspect is somebody who may have expressed an interest in real estate, right? A lot of internet leads are essentially suspects. They're just folks who may have seen something, or they were curious about something. They went on to an online platform. That platform required them to register a bit of information, and then a company scraped that information and voila, it got sold to you somehow. Hey, pay me X amount per month and I'll give you all these suspects, right? So that's what a lot of online leads are suspects. Very few of them are prospects or actual leads. A prospect, as you look at a stage, so if you start with a suspect, a prospect is someone who's clearly defined that they're looking for something. Hey, I'm looking to buy or sell. I haven't really defined the time frame that I'm going to do it, but I wanted to get an idea of the things that are there so that when I'm ready, I can execute what I want to have happen. That's the next stage. You start with a suspect, someone who's thinking, they were just curious in passing, just heard something and wanted to see if it was real. That's a suspect. A prospect is someone who's actually defined something that they want to do. They're not necessarily specific on time frame. They've not probably spoken to a lender, so they don't have an idea of what they can truly afford. Those are people who get to be a little bit more viable. And then you have obviously a true lead, somebody, I want to buy a house in the next 3 months, or I want to sell my house in the next 3 months. I'm just looking for the qualified professional who can execute and move the needle forward for me. So that's kind of how it works out. So your inside salesperson is the person who's going to really weed out the things that you, your buyer's agent, and or your listing specialist are going to do. They're the ones who spend the majority of their time hitting the phones, making sure that you've got enough business to work. Remember, each and every day, you and or any of your team are not face-to-face, belly-to-belly. You are unemployed. And again, looking at the amount of unemployment days you can afford, it's pretty significant. And the more you start to build your team, the less you can be unemployed, because you've got others who are dependent on you as the team lead to make sure that they don't have a bunch of unemployment days. Okay. The ideal inside salesperson, or the ISA as they're affectionately known in the industry, is someone who's comfortable on the phone. They've got to be a good communicator, either via email and text. They've got no problem starting conversations with complete strangers. Again, most of us, that's where our business fails us, is it's like, oh my God, I got to call somebody. And it's only because we don't have the right words to say. We don't know how to move the needle forward. So it's just like, hey, how are you? Right? We've all had that uncomfortable silence in an elevator. Before you get on the elevator in a wide open hall, you're sitting there going, hey, how's this going? Blah, 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 to someone you may see outside of the elevator. The second you get in, total silence. You're looking at your shoes. You're looking at the elevator door. You're looking at the ceiling. You're looking at the elevator buttons, but you're not having conversation. And that's because it addresses our own fear of meeting other people. And when we're in an isolated box, we're definitely wanting to kind of not interact with others. So your inside salesperson has to be that one who meets everybody and glad hands everybody, and they feel completely at home doing it. They should ideally have a real estate license. And the reason why you want them to have a real estate license, even though they don't have to, is that they can further the depth of the conversation they may be having with a potential suspect, prospect, or lead, because they're not limited by not having a license. So, if they don't have a license, they really can only talk a little bit. Hey, I want to get in a conversation with Nick, or with Abdi, or with Donna. They really can't further the conversation any more than that, because they don't have a license. And much of what we do is a licensed activity. Okay. Again, critical for qualifying your leads. And then finally is your listing specialist. That should be the last person to hire. Again, unless you are not practicing real estate and your sole focus is just to develop and grow a team of specialists who are out there swinging the bat for you each and every day, then a listing specialist is the last one on your list, because you should be your listing specialist, unless, like I said, you've got so much business going on, or that you've opted to not practice real estate in that way. Okay. So the listing specialist is the person who's the opposite of the buyer's agent. They're the yang to the yin of the buyer's agent. That's what they do all day long. They specialize in listing properties. I think each one of you know that there's a very different and unique strategy from listing to working with buyers, and each one has its own best use cases. So, as you're looking at bringing a listing specialist on board, this should be a highly skilled person, somebody who, is similar to your inside sales agent, meaning they have no fear, but they're wanting your volume to grow. They're wanting to be your evangelist, because that means you've got more sticks in the ground as a result of that person. You've got more, just marketed sales in someone's yard, because that person is out there doing your bidding, because they know they're going to benefit from it as well. Their primary role is to perform very solid market analysis. We know them as CMAs. They have intimate knowledge, with the neighborhoods that they're working. They're a closer. A listing agent is a solid closer. To be a listing agent, it's not a timid profession. You've got to be a solid closer. You've got to be willing to handle objections and understand objections. You've got to know multiple types of closes. You've got to understand buyer and seller behavior. All those things are critical to be a solid listing agent. Okay. They're going on lots of appointments. They're doing lots of final steps for the leads that are being nurtured. they're turning those prospects into clients, which is what we all want. So anybody who is in this role for you, they've got to be that person who carries a pen in their hand at all times, sign on the dotted line, Mr. and Mrs. Seller. Okay, those are the kinds of people that you want on your team. All right, let me stop sharing for a minute and let's open this up for questions. Guys, does this align? Does this fit in a bit with what you're all looking to do? Does this make sense? Anybody got questions on this?
You bet. One of the things that I ran into today, though, speaking with new recruit, was that she asked me what I want in a team member.
Mm-hmm.
And the only thing I could think of is what I don't want.
And what'd you tell her what you don't want?
Oh, I had a bad experience with a partner that I was working with a couple years ago. And so I kind of went off on that.
Okay.
We had
Tell
a great
us about the bad experience.
We got along and everything. Well, that bad experience was that she is from a different area and is older and expected the market to be a certain way. And it's not that. And she refused to listen to anything I tell her. And she insisted on doing everything her way. And we butted heads a lot.
Okay.
A lot.
And that's a tough one.
It is.
So how do you handle somebody who is continually refusing to follow with the direction and guidance that you're giving them, and they're just going to do it their own way, no matter what you say?
I had to let her do it. I just had to let her do it and just let her figure out that this isn't working. And she didn't. She ended up going back to, where she came from. And I don't want to say any places because I don't want to insult anybody.
Okay, got it. So
with stereotypes. So
right. Yeah.
Right. Because I'm just a country bumpkin and she's a big city person and she knows more than I do. So
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, honestly, Donna, that's one of the biggest challenges of, leadership as a whole. I run into that every day, both from agents and folks on my team. And I'm not the ultimate purveyor of all knowledge. I know a lot. I'm not going to lie. I know quite a bit of stuff, but there are some things that I rely on others because they've had some skill, they've had some expertise, they've had opportunities, that may be different from mine. And I'm always open and willing to listen. But at the end of the day, I am the one who is guiding the direction of where things are going. We can have open discussion, but that's when it gets to the point to where you have to just bluntly tell someone, look, I get it. I appreciate that. I want you to be on this team, but this is the way it's going to go. And those are things that are hard for most of us, is to actually kind of give that level of instruction to someone to where it's like, I hear you, but it's going to be this thing. I wish I could tell you it was going to be different, but it's going to be this thing,
Well, I've gotten a lot more confident since then.
Yeah.
As far as working with people, but that was a mess.
So how did you end it with this person who today who was kind of going, what are you looking for? So you talked about you had a bad experience, so you know what you're not looking for. How do you express what you are looking for? How do you tell someone I'm looking for this?
I did manage to bring the conversation back around to that, and it was in my own mind. I had this bad taste in my mouth from that other person, and still after a year.
Yeah, still even a year later, it's like, oh God.
But I did. I told her, I said I needed somebody in other areas who could be independent and take care of business there and take the referrals. And I think that we had a good conversation when it
got it. So that's a really good point that you bring up, Donna. So I really want to lean into this a bit. All of you are going to be interviewing in the next days, weeks, and months to grow your team and to kind of really get your solutions together. How are you going to express exactly what you want your team to look like to them? I know, because again, if you think about yourself, even though it's a commission-based activity, you've now become a true employer. You've got folks who work for you, right? They're carrying your brand. Hearthstone Realty, is who they're going to be working for effectively. How do you interview to where they're getting the most out of you and you're getting the most out of them. In other words, that perfect match. I don't know any of the dating apps. Otherwise, I'd use one. The only one I know or have heard of is Tinder, and I'm sure that's not what you're looking for. But how do you express, hey, this is what I'm looking for. This is why I think you would or would not be a good fit. And that's open for anybody. So does my question make sense, or is it too vague?
Totally makes sense.
It's a little too vague. Are you asking when we get a prospect to join our team?
When you're looking for a prospect to join your team, not when you get. So as you're interviewing, what's your process of interviews to where they can fully understand your vision and your understanding what their goals are, and you get the two to align?
I don't go that route. It's more for me relational. It's
always relational, and it's all a component of relationships. But if you've got something I want, or at least I think you've got something I want, you've got to be able to tell me what it is. Right. And that's part of the relationship. Relationships are about communication. So at the end of the day, how are you communicating in a very effective way to where they've clearly understood that what you're offering is exactly what they're looking for, and vice versa, that you're realizing this person is a good fit and will honor my culture?
It's a tough one.
That's why I asked it.
Yeah.
I'm teasing you about it.
I mean, it's a valid, discussion for sure. It's more in the lines of if they actually onboard. I would say that's more of an onboarding thing than
it's anything. An interview thing, not onboarding.
It should be an interview thing, but in my process so far, that's more of an onboarding thing, but it definitely should be an interview thing.
Yeah. So because this is the thing, and I'm not sure if you were on when I said it. Slow to hire, quick to fire.
Right.
If they're already behind your curtain and you didn't ask these crucial things up front, now 5 months later, you're stuck with, God, this person just irritates me every single day, and I've gotten no output from them, and they're constantly draining my resource, right? That's why it's an upfront interview question.
Yeah.
Jaynette, you were going to say something.
I can tell if you guys could hear me or not.
Jaynette, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
It might be your connection, Jaynette.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay, good. So I was going to say that, like, if we all go in actually knowing what we want, you want to put your questions together in the beginning. You want to know what you want on your team, as you were already saying. But if you put all of that together and you actually conduct a real interview process, when you're meeting with these other agents, I think it will make better for what you end up with on your team. You can't just go and say it's just about a feeling. You have to have, your list together, what it is your expectations are, even though we are independent agents and we are, you're kind of have salespeople that do their own thing. No, you can't tell me that you're a city slicker and you know more than me, but if you go in, because I know that I do a lot of recruiting as well. I've done a lot of recruiting before. You have to have those things in place when you're meeting with people. If you don't, then you will have those people that are going to last for 2 months, 3 months. So you got to know what your expectations are and what it is that you want to have on your team, and have that discussion prior to even bringing them on your team. So if you put a list together, and that means even, having some of the if you have the don'ts, because I heard you say that, Donna, what you didn't want. So if you don't want this, what is it that you do want?
Right. Yeah. What's the yang to that?
And you got to have that all together prior to meeting with these people. And then what I also do, or what I've been doing, is I'll follow up once I brought somebody on my team, and we sit and we have an hour and a half discussion and expectation meeting. And then that way, that's the tone.
You and Jovan are saying some of the same things. Once they're through the door, different experience, but getting them through the door, you just brought up some stellar points, which is, it's all about what do we do to get them through the door. And one thing that's kind of a myth, guys, so I hear agents say this a lot, we're independent, right? And what that actually means is the fact that it just simply means that you don't have an overseer that you report to on a day-to-day. You function autonomously, you set your own hours. That's why a lot of agents will absolutely not do well, because they're thinking, I'm independent. So again, that goes back to unemployment days. I'm independent. I'm going to have 20 unemployment days this month. So be careful that you don't fall into that trap, because again, you're wanting to get the maximum output from these folks. And I really like what Jeanette said, which is, it's part of your business planning strategy. If you don't understand what you want from someone, then they're not going to understand what you want. So having your questions prepared in advance, what would you do in this scenario? And if you've never created questions like this, certainly I can help you with it, or there are all kinds of online resources that can help guide you to it. But it is critical. It is critical. I've hired hundreds, if not thousands, of agents in my career. And I've also turned away hundreds of agents in my career. Folks that I'm kind of going, and you hear this expression, you can never tell who's going to make it, who's going to be successful. While that is true, there are elements that I can clearly see through that I'm going, nah, not you. Nah, not you. Because either A, they don't fit with me culturally. Like you were saying, Donna, there are people who are just so damn adversarial. You're just kind of going, yeah, this isn't going to work, right? Nobody needs that on their plate. It's draining, it's time consuming, it saps your energy. And it's, at the end of the day, it serves nothing for anyone. So, yeah, good points, Jeanette.
Yeah, totally. I've been an off the cuff kind of person. I want everything to be kind of organic, and I want to get a feel for the person. But yep. I definitely, especially after today, realize that I need checklists. I need questions already out there, points that I need to talk about, and I don't have that.
I'm going to say something to you, Donna. So I am much like you, which is I like off the cuff, but I will tell you this. I'm highly structured, even though I don't seem like it, right? I make things look like they just happened, right? And that's kind of what I think you mean when you say off the cuff, because we've all had bad sales experiences. So we think, well, if I just meet you and we just kind of free form into it, it'll all work out. Yeah. I have learned over lots of years, honestly, off the cuff never works, because we're suddenly faced with things that can't be met, right? We're suddenly in events that can't be mitigated at that moment because we don't have a tool of resource in order to handle that. So the best way to be off the cuff, as you said, or to at least feel like you have that dynamic, is to be well studied. And that means being good at scripts and dialogues, as Jeanette said, to have a list of things always at your ready. So those are things that you practice over and over again, that you just have ingrained in your brain on a daily basis. That way it feels organic. It feels off the cuff. It feels like we're just having conversation, when in reality you were very well rehearsed to achieve a specific outcome. And that's what you want your business model to look like. You've got to have an outcome already designed. Otherwise, it's this thing of, I think I like this person, but I'm, right? You want to be that. So I'm glad that you're actually working through what that feels like for you. I mean, it's definitely not something that just happens overnight, but once you start to get comfortable with that, and it's just like doing scripts and dialogues. Once you get really good at scripts and just commit certain processes to memory, it's all academic at that point. You just wake up and go, blah, 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 because you just know it right off the top of your head.
Yeah, something.
Go ahead.
No, it's something on. So I haven't built my team in real estate. That's what I'm thinking. But before I get into real estate, I was in corporate. And I had my team. I had I hired a lot of people too, interviewing. Mm-hmm. One of the things that it was just kind of like, and listening to you guys, one of the things that it was kind of like helping me out to kind of hiring the right people for our team was, some people that came in, especially I was a network engineer. So, a lot of people come in with 2-3 pages of resumes, all the things that they've done and those kind of things. And for me, I mean, I already had my questions. So having the question, I think, is super helpful. So, but I kind of adjusted my questions based on their performance on the interview too. So for example, right. A lot of, a lot of times I didn't even look at the resumes. even beforehand. I just
Resumes lie.
yeah, it's just, and I close my laptop, put the resume again, aside, and just to start asking the simple questions. If they start advancing, like for example, like if they get a little bit more, especially like in a networking world, sometimes like the whole network goes down for the whole office, like 500 people that are without the internet, and all the
Mhm.
sales managers and VPs, the CEO of the company, your managers, everybody's chasing you, what's going on and those kind of things. So it's really, you have to buy time and those kind of things. So I start asking these people, like, how would you perform, and ask them scenarios, the
Mhm.
stuff that I've already done, and based on that, just kind of like getting to know them. I think it was kind of like helping me out.
And I think
hiring the
that
resume.
what Donna may have been alluding
Yes,
to when she said being
exactly.
organic is let me get to know you. I mean, a great question for that is so, and I do this every day, every single day. Tell
Mhm.
me about you. How'd you come to get into real estate? What'd you do before you got into real estate? Tell me a little bit about your life. The more you can impress on someone that I want to get to know you as a person, because that speaks to the culture you're trying to develop with your team, the easier it is to ask questions that may be a challenge or more difficult or more intimate. So, having them to disclose right up front and, really just kind of talk openly about who they are will tell you a lot about where that interview is going, right? If you
Yep.
don't kind of lay that foundation, they're going to be everywhere. And as Abdi just said, they're going to be drawing on the highlights of their CV or their resume. Well, I was general vice chair of XYZ. Who gives it? Who cares, right? It's like, tell me about you. I want to know how you're going to fit. And we all know that no matter what we did in our former lives, real estate's a brand new ticket, right? It's a brand new ticket. And how are they going to be able to adapt and adjust in this new environment that they suddenly found themselves in?
Yeah. And it was funny sometimes that sometimes even like the people that had the longest resumes, like when they start talking, I could tell like they're BSing because they never really done the work. They just like read things, and they don't have the experience.
Oh,
And
completely.
and it's sometimes, but sometimes we hired people that they didn't have the experience, but they were eager to learn. So I'm trying to apply
Yeah.
the same thing. Like, I don't care, like, because I'm the same way. Like, if I don't know something, I'll ask, but I figure it out. Even I tell them my clients, I don't come up with things. I say, oh, I don't know it, but I'll figure it out.
Right. And there's nothing wrong with that. Again, keep in mind that when you're talking about a resume or something like that, those are folks who are coming from a job mentality. Jobs are about compliance, guys. I'm sure all of you know that. Just like school is. At a certain point, school is not designed, I'm talking about college and other higher forms of education. They're really not designed to teach you anything. So great students, do great because they're compliant individuals. Got to get that A. So I'm going to do all the tasks that are laid out. It doesn't mean that they're explorative or they want to know anything beyond that. That's why you have some of the best visionaries that have ever walked the planet that are folks who didn't graduate college, right? And that's because those are folks like, I hear what you're saying. I think your thesis is great, but I'm curious as to why you're saying that. And is there a better mousetrap? So you've got some of the, most richest, successful people on the planet who live that way. So that's another reason why you want to make sure that you are absolutely on point with your interview process. It's got to be right there because that person is going to affect your culture. And so even if you may vibe with that person, is the rest of your team going to be able to vibe with that person, right? The one thing we can safely say is we are all individuals, but a team functions as a unit, right? What did we just go through? So we're in March Madness right now. We just went through the Super Bowl, those kinds of things. All of those team members have individual personalities, but they all subscribe to a uniform notion of performance, right? Every last one of them. There's a certain way to catch a ball. There's a certain way to throw a ball. There's a certain way to kick a ball. There's a certain way to run a ball. And you can't put your own individual flair to it because I'm going to do it this way. Hey, I know everybody runs forward, but I'm going to run side to side and spin around 6 times before I do anything else, right? It's got to be uniform in the sense of, again, each one of you is a team leader, and you've got to be the one to hold that team in line. Yep, can't go sideways. We're going forward. You need to go forward too. Okay. Anything else that you guys want to add? Any other questions you have? I'm gonna be jumping into another room, which is Scripts and Dialogues. You guys are all welcome to join me there as well.
The one thing that I hear every week, right, is something that I've learned when I went to Zillow Connect and I was watching these other kind of mega teams do their presentations. Is the one uniform thing that all these successful teams had in common was people will come for the leads, but they will stay for the culture. So just want to.
I have mixed feelings about that. I agree with you. I think people will come for the leads and will stay for the culture. What I was just pausing on for a brief moment was, it's very difficult to build a team based on leads, because leads are finite and they will eventually dry up, and then you're kind of stuck. So even with a strong culture, they're like, I was here for this. But I agree with you for sure, Jovan.
Because I've been on both ends of the spectrum. When I've been on teams, I've had teams where they've had a lot of leads coming in, but there was no culture. So once I learned how to generate leads, it's like, all right, well, I'm going over to where I fit better in the culture, the office culture. And then I go to an office and they have absolutely no marketing. They're cool, fun people. They have a great culture, but they have like nothing going on. So then, I leave that team. So it's really, I mean, I was listening to all these successful teams and they're like, scaling like 50, 100 agents. And their retention rate is just incredible, But I really like that saying. I just wanted to share that.
No, I appreciate you sharing that for sure. Always keep your bottom line in mind, though. But that's a great share, Jovan. Guys, you're welcome to join me in Scripts and Dialogues if you want to jump into that room. We're right at time. I appreciate the time you guys shared. Bye.
Thank you, D.
You're quite well. Thanks, Brendan. Bye, guys.